Welcome, everyone, to the Pick Six podcast, where we discuss the biggest stories in college football. I'm your host, Chris Cheng, and we have got a thick one today. So let's jump right into it. Wisconsin is suing Miami. The Xavier Lucas saga has entered its latest iteration. The University of Wisconsin and its NIL collective have filed a lawsuit Friday against the University of Miami, alleging tortious interference. While not mentioned in the suit, instead cited as student athlete A, the complaint centers around defensive back Xavier Lucas, who left Wisconsin for Miami this past winter. Now, Wisconsin is seeking financial damages and a judgment that Miami's actions wrongfully interfere with contractual commitments. Okay, so for those of you who may not be familiar with this story, let's do a quick review of the timeline and how we got here. So this all begins back in December 7th. Xavier Lucas hops on X, formerly known as Twitter, and says, "Thank you, Wisconsin, for everything. I'm officially in the transfer portal. Peace out. I'm gone." Fast forward 10 days later, Lucas reaches out to a Wisconsin assistant coach 2 days after returning home from South Florida for winter break and asks to be placed in the transfer portal. The next day, Lucas offers a personal family related reason for wanting to enter the portal in a text message. Then, a couple days later, on December 21st, a relative of Lucas's contacted a Wisconsin coach and provided information that was inconsistent with that family related rationale for seeking to transfer the lawsuit says. Now, fast forward to January 7th, after Wisconsin refused to budge on entering Lucas into the portal, he hired Darren Heitner to try and negotiate a resolution. Heitner threatened to file an antitrust lawsuit over Wisconsin, allegedly violating NCAA rules in its refusal to enter Lucas into the transfer portal, and sent over a notice to terminate the revenue share agreement that he signed. Now, then on January 17th, the NCAA issued a statement that Friday saying that the NCAA rules do not prevent a student athlete from unenrolling from an institution and enrolling at a new institution, competing immediately. So then what does Xavier Lucas do? Lucas, since he's not getting things done through the transfer portal, he immediately unenrolls at the University of Wisconsin and then immediately enrolls at Miami. Now, fast forward a couple days to January 21st, Lucas posts on X, "It's good to be home." It's a little video of him in his UM gear, throwing up the U. Everything seems copacetic and fine, right? Wrong. We fast forward a few months to June 2nd, and how convenient is this? The NCAA levied penalties against Wisconsin football for recruiting violations that occurred in the previous year in 2023. Just a few days later, I guess Wisconsin said, "F it. We're going to do our own thing." And they filed their lawsuit against Miami. So now, in the complaint filed Friday against Miami, Wisconsin alleges that Miami staff member and an alumnus met with Lucas and his family at a relative's home in Florida in December of 2024. Now, after the defensive back signed a 2-year revenue sharing deal with Wisconsin. Now, that included a compensation commitment from Miami that was more lucrative than Wisconsin's deal. So you can kind of see where we're getting into this. It's like, just a little background also on that deal. It's not really a full contract. It was more of a memorandum of understanding. And what happened is we reported this back in December that a lot of the Big 12 schools were making their student athletes sign these kind of deals in preparation for the House versus NCAA settlement that was coming. So that a lot of institutions kind of knew that they were going to have to probably start paying their athletes, and they wanted to get ahead of it. And they wanted to make sure that their athletes were signing over their NIL rights so that they could use them, while at the same time getting into a locked deal. So this is where we kind of start getting into a little murky territory, because it's like you're signing a memo for something that hasn't happened yet. So it gets a little murky right here. Well, is that uh, memo of understanding, the MOU? I'm not going to refer to it as a contract, even though I guess for all intents and purposes it is. Does that hold up? We really don't know. Miami representatives communicated with student athlete A. They say Miami representatives communicated with student A that him and his family members, including an in-person December 2024 visit from a Miami coach and a prominent Miami alumnus to the Florida home of a relative of student A, Wisconsin's complaint states the information related in the in-home visit was communicated to a UW Madison by a relative of the student on December 18th, which we discussed in the timeline. Lucas's attorney, however, Darren Heitner, said that in the winter, Wisconsin violated NCAA rules by refusing to place Lucas in the transfer portal. So it's kind of like, well, if you're not going to help us out and follow the rules, we're going to seek other means of doing this. So, why is this important? So, Wisconsin is seeking unspecified financial damages. And here's the most important part, a declaratory judgment deeming UM's actions as wrongful for interfering with a binding revenue share contract between UW and Xavier Lucas. Basically, what they want is a judgment that will set a precedent in tampering. Tampering has been an issue in college football for years. I think everyone kind of understands it. I would liken it kind of to driving the speed limit, right? For the most part, I think most of us drive around the speed limit. Some of us drive a little bit low, some of us drive a little bit above it. But for the most part, no one really gets flagged if you're in that 5 to 10 mile range, right? Well, Wisconsin is saying, no, no more. If you go 1 mile over the speed limit, we're gonna pull you over, and that's what they're doing. I think a lot of players understand with the age of the transfer portal that there are going to be communications. Whether it's, I think the smart schools won't directly communicate; they will use some sort of mediator, which is what I think pretty much happened with the Xavier Lucas story. You have to remember Xavier Lucas is a South Florida native. He played at American Heritage. A lot of his friends were recruited by Miami. He was recruited by Miami. It was his second choice, so he has a lot of ties to the program. His friends play at Miami, so it's not too far off to assume that maybe someone had reached out and told Lucas, hey, we're in need of a DB, which we desperately are. Why don't you come play for the U? It was your second choice. Perfect timing. Sadly, his dad is sick. So it makes for a mutually beneficial situation for both UM and for the Xavier Lucas and his family. Sadly, it looks like UW, the University of Wisconsin, is kind of pouting and pouting over soured grapes. So the issue, I've read through the entire lawsuit. What they claim, yes, could it move forward? Of course, but I think there's like a really important thing to understand about lawsuits. And I was lucky enough to talk to my wife, who is an attorney. Just because someone files a lawsuit doesn't mean that there's going to be an immediate action. There are several steps after filing a lawsuit that have to occur before a judgment is set. And the first thing is it's what Miami's probably most likely going to do is just set a motion to dismiss. They're going to say, hey, like we were not involved in this. This was between Xavier Lucas, the person representing him legally, and UW. Like, he tried to get out of it. We weren't tampering. Maybe they'll maybe admit, hey, there was a space that was available for him and we were willing to take him, but we did not actually contact him or pursue him, right? And so that gets into what I think are some of the holes in this argument and in this issue. The first being the employee issue, right? So we're talking about a contract right now, a to correctly title it a memorandum of understanding, an MOU, right? So does this make Xavier Lucas a employee? Is he a 1099 contracted worker, or is he just a student athlete? You'll notice in the lawsuit, they never mention Xavier Lucas's name. He is just titled Student Athlete A, which we all know is Xavier Lucas, but by process of elimination. And so my biggest issue in all of this is the fact that, okay, well, where do we go from here? Because you're suing Miami for tampering, but what are they tampering with? Are they tampering with an employer? Are they playing a student athlete? Where are the grounds for this? Students are allowed to transfer, and like we just talked about in the timeline, the NCAA even ruled there's no rules that say a student can unenroll from another school and then immediately enroll in another school and play. There's no rule for that. And frankly, I mean, the NCAA also is kind of got their arms tied behind their back. They're probably saying we don't want to get involved with this. Like I mentioned, they're not suing the student, which I think is also kind of a sign. It's like, how do you sue the institution, but not the student, who the thing you're asking for is damages, but the student got the money, not the university. So it kind of is a little weird why it's like you can't have one and not have the other. You know what I mean? And one of the biggest issue, I guess, because if you do end up having to bring Xavier Lucas into this, that's going to set a horrible precedent for the University of Wisconsin. Like, who is going to want to go play for them now, right? Let's say you commit there, things don't work out for X, Y, or Z reason, and you want to leave. Well, one, they've shown you that they're not going to let you go in the transfer portal, and then two, they're going to show you that, hey, if you do find a means of getting to another school, we're going to sue you and we're going to come after you. And so I just don't know, do they really want to do this? I think this is more kind of a shot across the bow. I don't think even the University of Wisconsin thinks they're going to win this. I think this is kind of just all for show. This is kind of a puff your chest up. Let's act like some Billy badasses and let's make sure Miami suffers for this tampering, which it's par for the course. Miami, we're the bad guys. People don't like us. People don't like us to see competitive. And especially in the transfer portal and recruiting, obviously, we're doing stellar. And so I think this is the University of Wisconsin, which is a program that has been marred by mediocrity the last couple seasons and has had some pretty down years. Last year included, I think they went 5-7. Um, they're just probably a little angry and little tinfoil hat theory. Maybe they're trying to get rid of Luke Fickell. Maybe this is kind of like, okay, there's a lot of drama going on. We've had a rough season last year. Recruiting is not that great this year. We'll see where it goes. We're just going to add this as something else for a reason to fire him. I think next, another hole in the argument is the burden of proof. Like, how are you going to prove? The only evidence that they've showcased so far is that they say that that the family member came forward and didn't necessarily implicate Xavier Lucas, but said, hey, we don't know yet. We'll see when we get to the discovery phase of the lawsuit, that maybe the dad wasn't as sick, or maybe the dad being sick wasn't the main reason for leaving. Either way, a lot of that is hearsay. I don't think when you get that family member, even if you get to the deposition phase and you depose him, I don't even think he's going to admit at that point. You know what I mean? I think this was more of kind of like, I think the coaching staff may have reached out to a family member, someone they maybe felt comfortable with, someone they were maybe cool with, who had been helpful in his original recruiting from high school, and said, hey, what's going on? How bad's the dad? Is the dad really sick? Or maybe they were really slick with it. They were like, hey, man, we just wanted to check and see how the dad was. And just, off the cuff, the family member was like, oh, yeah, he's great. He's fine. And they're using that as evidence to say, oh, the dad really wasn't sick, or the testimony from a family member doesn't really corroborate the whole my dad was sick, I'm trying to go to Miami kind of thing. So either way, this just doesn't smell, just on the burden of proof line, this doesn't really pass the smell test. It's a little sus that why would a family member? Now, I could understand a teammate. Maybe he talked to a teammate and they were texting, or maybe they were talking to, there was locker room conversations that were had. I could understand that being used as evidence, but to say a family member would go out of their way to sell out their family member, that just doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and it doesn't pass the smell test. And then next, we have Xavier Lucas's attorney, who helped him navigate getting out of Wisconsin, has gone on record saying the Miami staff was not involved in this, and that they, Lucas and his team, were acting independently from the school and staff. You can see Heitner's interview. He's done a ton of them online. And every time he says, yeah, Miami has not been involved in this. I have not been in contact with Miami. Yes, he is an adjunct professor at Miami, but has no ties to the actual football program. So it just, why would he go out of his way to say that that wasn't happening, knowing he could get deposed, right, himself, because I don't think he's representing Lucas anymore, and then have that happen, right? Just, it does. People don't usually do that. People don't go out and tell a story like that. Specifically, a lawyer will not go out and just start lying blatantly in a public forum if he wasn't telling the truth, right? So I don't think Miami was technically involved in this in the way that the University of Wisconsin is claiming in this lawsuit. And like I said, we have several minutes of footage where Heitner is expressing that he has no connection to the football program, that he has not been in contact with the football program, and that they acted independently. And then lastly, the lawsuit seeks damages to compensate Wisconsin for the loss of financial and promotional benefits anticipated they were receiving from Xavier Lucas and the NIL from his participation on the football team. Like, how do you calculate that? How do you know what a freshman DB, who, by the way, wasn't even starting at the beginning of the season, he started towards the end of the season. How do you calculate that value? right? Other than maybe, which we discussed when we first covered this story, maybe it was the fact that he was paid an upfront fee for being on the team and engaging in this new revenue share. Maybe there was a portion of that, all of which I think can just be paid back, right? Whether it's Lucas or if Miami really wants to go above board and kind of settle this before it gets any further, they can write $100,000 check and keep it moving. You know what I mean? Again, major holes in this argument from the University of Wisconsin. I think this is, again, shot across the bow, warning shot, and maybe the half court shot to get some sort of ruling on tampering because, again, a lot of coaches have been talking about it behind closed doors, but I think everyone understands. Like, Coach Cristobal and Miami could have easily gone and sued Alabama for taking Isaiah Horton. Like, we know there was tampering involved in that. Like you're telling me our best wide receiver who's coming back, and we're getting a great quarterback in Beck just left because he just on a whim. I'm going to go to an Alabama program that's got an unproven quarterback, with a stud wide receiver and Ryan Williams already there, and I'm going to go there and play. And there was no one tampering. No, there was tampering. But we don't play the crybaby game. We understand how the game is played. And this is the biggest issue because I haven't mentioned this yet, but the Big Ten has been involved in all of this. Also, they said in a statement in a memo that they support the University of Wisconsin in their lawsuit and their endeavors to seek justice. And I'm sure they're probably giving them a few dollars for their legal fees. And that creates the biggest issue because Nebraska did the same thing before with a player named Mac Markway, who left LSU to play at Nebraska. So it's okay if a Big Ten school facilitates an enrollment, but of course, when Miami does it, it's tampering. It's very hypocritical when you look at that, and it's very hypocritical when you look at the Big Ten, going as far to release a memo, knowing that Nebraska did the same thing to say, hey, we want to lock this stuff down. Again, tampering, is it right? No, but I think everyone understands they do it. That's why I gave the analogy of the speed limit. Like, do we drive this? Do we drive the speed limit? Sure, but everyone understands they're going to drive 5 to 10 miles over the speed limit for the most part. Some of us are a little riskier and we go higher. And if we get caught, we get caught. But most people understand that's just the way the game is played. That's just what we do. And so I just think that this whole lawsuit is just frivolous. I think it's petty. It's really unbecoming of a university as prestigious as the University of Wisconsin, a school and an academic institution that prides itself on being a class act. This is not that. I mean, I could understand like a smaller school, they need some money. They don't want to lose a good player. Maybe they truly believe that Xavier Lucas was going to be, if he played for another school, was going to be their future. University of Wisconsin was not doing that. They were not building their program around a cornerback. And frankly, you just don't do that. That rarely happens. A running back, a quarterback, absolutely, but maybe a wide receiver, but a cornerback, not trying to devalue him. I've just never seen it. I've just never seen a program built around a cornerback. So to me, I think this is a lot made about nothing. This is a mountain into a molehill, and I just wonder, like, what do you guys think? But is this legit? Do you think this is something serious? Do you think this is petty? Did Miami tamper? Can Wisconsin win this? That's the biggest. I think that's one of the biggest things is how far does this go? Because again, there are several steps we have to take before this even makes its way into a courtroom, right? Like I said, Miami has to answer, right? And in their answer, they'll have the opportunity to file a motion to dismiss. Okay, well, once it doesn't go into that, it goes to discovery phase where everyone's got to put all their evidence and all the things they have moving forward. That's when I think we'll kind of figure out what kind of legs this is standing on. But judging by the lawsuit itself, reading through it's a lot of hearsay. It's a lot of, and contingent, by the way, upon one family member. That's it. And we don't know. It doesn't specifically state in the lawsuit what the family member said, whether that was a phone call conversation, text, in person, we don't know. And so when that person comes back and they try to depose them, will the story still corroborate? Or will the story be the same as what Wisconsin is alleging, because we all know through the game of telephone and just the fact that like people see things differently, and the way things may have been um understood, it could have been different. So I there's a lot of questions. I think there's more questions than answers that we have in front of us, and it's just sad because I don't think this is something one the Wisconsin should be doing, given the state of their program. Them now being on probation for their own recruiting violations. Um, and I think also for the Big Ten. I mean, I'm not saying Miami's going to leave to go to the Big Ten, but like, you think Miami wants to go to the Big Ten now? Like that, and then how awkward is that if Miami does go to the Big Ten, right? Like, what happens? I mean, let's ask the big question. Is tampering a real issue? Is this something that needs to be tackled, or is this just an aspect of the game? Is this just something that we all understand? I don't really know. I don't know. There's a tension in there that I sit in the middle of, that I'm like, yeah, I would love to see tampering go away. 'Cause I would love to have Isaiah Horton back on the team. I would love to not lose players. I would love to have that security of not losing players. But again, how do you police that? Is there 2 degrees, 3 degrees, 4 degrees of separation that you need to have in communication? And then whatever that limit is, who's to stop someone from going a little bit further, right? Because it's like, again, it's permissible for athletes to talk to each other, right? There's no NCAA bylaw. There's no rules that say athletes can't talk to each other. And it's very easy. The coach doesn't even talk to the player. Players will tell you, bro, we need a cornerback. What you doing? How much you getting paid? Okay. And by the way, again, because NIL is not handled through the schools right now, and even through the House versus NCAA, I still don't think the universities will have control of NIL, which is why that Big 12, which I think we'll do a video on that. We'll do a video on this whole Big 10 memo of understanding that they're making their players sign. Um, they're very independent, where I think the Big 10 is trying to bring them together, and the Big 10 wants their schools to control NIL. The players can go straight to the collectives and say, hey, what are you willing to play for a cornerback that starts at the University of Wisconsin and has these stats? You don't have to say his name. You just say that. Again, I'm just showing you how easy it is to facilitate these kind of agreements and these kind of things. And so I just don't know where they're going to go with this. And then lastly, what comes after this? Okay, we move on. Let's say Wisconsin gets their wish. Show me how you're going to police it. Who's going to police it? Who's in charge? Is it the NCAA? Is it going to be the new, college settlement commission that was made after House versus NCAA? Who controls this? No one wants to step up and take the accountability and the leadership in this. So again, frivolous. I think it's hollow. I think it's really shallow. I think we as Miami fans are used to this. It's just par for the course. People do not like us to succeed. When we do succeed, all knives are out, all weapons are out, and so comes the territory. I love it. That means we're back. I think the U is back. Nothing says that better. We've got a ton of momentum right now with recruiting going into 2026. I am getting hyped. We have got to talk about what's coming up this season. What are the expectations for each team in each conference? Who are the front runners? Who are the dark horses? We're going to get into that in the next couple weeks. Well, guys, we have made it through another one. Another one is in the books. Thank you all for watching. Until next week, be good, y'all. Win the weekend. And as always, go Canes.